I may not be an expert on the Colorado narrow gauge, but even then, I still find it fascinating. Today's video is about a brand new Colorado route add-on developed by Milepost Simulations, namely the Colorado and Southern Alpine Tunnel route. Milepost is the same developer who made the Clear Creek narrow gauge and Rio Grande Southern add-ons of 2016 and 2023 respectively, amongst other American routes for TS. The Colorado and Southern Alpine Tunnel add-on was released on the 19th of June 2026, and you can buy it on Steam. However, the add-on is not particularly cheap, costing $46.49 NZD at full price. As for what's included, you get 22 miles, or around 35 kilometers of track from St. Elmo to Pitkin, part of the Gunnison division on what was originally the Denver, South Park and Pacific, later reorganized as the Denver, Leadville and Gunnison in 1889, and the DNLG was later taken over by the Colorado and Southern in 1903. As the add-on's name implies, the St. Elmo to Pitkin section features the titular Alpine Tunnel, or, if it was served by a famous New Zealand tourist train, the Transalpine Tunnel. Silly jokes aside, the tunnel was 540 metres long and sat at the highest point on the line, 3,512 metres above sea level. At the time of its completion in 1881, this was the highest railway tunnel in North America. The line between St. Elmo and Pitkin had gradients as steep as 1 in 33 to 1 in 25 on either side of the summit. To be honest, I'm disappointed to see that the only locomotive included with the CNS Alpine Tunnel add-on is one that we already have. This is the Colorado and Southern B4D Class 280, which first appeared in Train Simulator as part of the previously mentioned Clear Creek narrow gauge add-on. Incidentally, you can get what is effectively an original condition version of the B4D as part of the clunkily named Clear Creek Old Timer Rolling Stock Pack of April 2017. Only 2 variants of the B4D are provided in the newer Alpine Tunnel add-on, with the only difference between them being the presence of a snowplow on one variant. If you want the variant equipped with a Ridgeway spark arrestor, along with locomotive number 70 in her oil-burning condition, you'll need the CC&G add-on. Your mileage may vary, but personally, I prefer how the B4D locomotives look with a Ridgeway. As for any Denver, South Park and Pacific era locomotives available for TS, Machine Rail have modelled some of the DSP&P's Cook 280s, which you can still buy from MR's website as of early June 2026, as well as the Cook 260s that were released on Steam in June 2022. I'd be very interested in driving the DSP&P's 286 Mason Bogey if she was ever modelled for TS. Personally, I sometimes like to use other 3-foot gauge locomotives, like the K27 that comes with the RGS add-on, on the Alpine Tunnel route, even though it's not realistic in the slightest for a K27 to run on this line. In any case, I remember that the original B4D from CC&G doesn't have the best sound set, particularly where the bell and recycled Pennsy K4 whistle were concerned. Not much was changed for the B4D's sound set in the Alpine Tunnel pack, but at least the whistle is different. I don't know about you, but personally, I swear that I could hear little clips in the whistle audio. Other aspects of the B4D that I find disappointing are the lack of animation on the bell cord inside the cab, the weird click sound that you get in here whenever you move some of the controls, The lack of any gradual fade in and fade out for the blower audio, which is so off-putting that I'm hesitant to have the blower open at all when I'm driving the B4D. The constant thick plume of smoke from the locomotive's funnel, even when she's sitting idle with both the blower and regulator closed. And perhaps the most annoying one, the constant flange squeal on the curves, even when you're not speeding. I noticed that the B4D's brass textures are different from how they were on the original CCNG variant, but I would argue that the new brass textures look worse than the older textures. Meanwhile, the rolling stock selection included with the Alpine Tunnel route comprises a four-wheel bobber caboose that looks like the way car in Railroads Online, two variants of a 30-foot boxcar, clerestory combine and passenger coaches, a non-clerestory excursion coach, a flanger, a gondola that's either empty or loaded with coal, flatbeds, as empty or one of two different load options, and a refrigerated boxcar, also known as reefer. The clerestory coaches look very similar to what we already have with Clear Creek narrow gauge, but that add-on didn't include this combine variant with a small guards compartment at one end. Here in New Zealand, we refer to this sort of arrangement as a car van, and I've never known anyone in this country to use the term combine. Thinking back to the gondola wagon, this is what my silly FOMA brain normally thinks of when I hear a certain YouTuber talk about the Hell Gondola, even though she's actually referring to the type of gondola that you can ride on the water. Out of all the included rolling stock items, the only ones that I don't recognise as being recycled from previous add-ons are the flanger and combine coach. Initially, I didn't realise that the excursion coach from the Alpine Tunnel pack is the same design as what's already available in the previously mentioned Clear Creek Older Timer add-on. As for why the Alpine Tunnel add-on caught my eye in the first place, it's because I was intrigued upon realising that it's set quite far back in the past, even more so than the CCNG and RGS routes. More specifically, this route is set somewhere between 1905 and 1910. By that point, the Denver, Leadville and Gunnison had gone into receivership and been merged into the Colorado and Southern. The CNS tried to keep the Alpine Tunnel route going, but sadly, it wasn't to be. The tunnel suffered a small cave-in in 1905, and efforts to repair said cave-in resulted in 4 men losing their lives. Later, in 1907, there was another financial crash that spelled doom for what little traffic remained on the line. The tunnel was ultimately abandoned in 1910, and has long since been sealed off, while the old railway formation is now a hiking trail on the eastern side and an unsealed road on the western side that leads to the restored telegraph office. Due to the line's severe gradients, even moderate-length trains were helped over the hill by multiple locomotives. If you ask me, this is kind of like the steam-era equivalent of distributed power units that you would see on modern-day American freight trains, and it also reminds me of operations on New Zealand's long-closed Rimutaka Incline. Another interesting aspect of the climb up to the Alpine Tunnel is the presence of 3 water tanks just on the western side, which had a near constant 1 in 25 uphill grade between quartz and the tunnel. If you were to go all the way from Pitkin to St Elmo, or vice versa, in one shot, it would take at least 1 hour and 40 minutes to complete the run due to a severe speed limit of only 15 miles per hour throughout the whole route. Due to the steep climbs on both sides of the tunnel, I wouldn't recommend running a train longer than 3 coaches or 4 wagons plus caboose behind a single B4D. To add, if you maintain the fire mass at a steady 790 to 800 pounds and the boiler water level around 80 to 95%, you shouldn't have much of an issue maintaining boiler pressure on the inclines. And now for one more driving tip for the B4D. When you're starting away from stationary on an uphill grade, I would highly recommend opening the regulator before the brakes are fully released, so as to minimise the risk of rolling back. On the whole, I'm of the opinion that Milepost Simulations steam locomotives are neither too basic nor too advanced. They're just, for want of a better word, average, especially when compared to the more advanced locomotives from developers like Smokebox and Precision Locomotive Developments. Something I haven't thought to mention until now is the lack of signals on this route, but in this case at least, that lack of signals is realistic. Instead of following conventional signals, train crews would receive written train orders that told them where to stop and wait for another train going the other way. Track sections that lack conventional signals are often referred to as dark territory these days. As for any especially noteworthy scenery items and landmarks on the St Elmo to Pitkin section, there are 2 aerial ropeways up the line from St Elmo, complete with an animated bucket in both cases, a nice colour palette on the station building at Romley, this short wooden bridge connected to a mine entrance at Flora Bell, a grounded boxcar body at Hancock, where a proper station building used to be, the long snow sheds on either side of the Alpine Tunnel, this retaining wall below a sheer cliff face known as the Palisades, a decent looking log cabin at Woodstock, an interesting setup for the coaling point at Pitkin and Hancock being the only locations on the route with anything close to a reasonably sized yard, and the general feeling of being in the middle of absolutely nowhere throughout the entire route. The scenery appears to be done in a way where it still looks decent, for the most part, without compromising the frame rates too much. In my case, I was getting an average frame rate of between 70 and 110 frames per second. Of course, one can't forget the unique engine shed near the Alpine Tunnel's west portal. This seems like a bizarre place to build an engine shed, if you ask me, but what do I know? In any case, and if my research is correct, the shed burnt down in 1906, although I'm not sure how, because I wouldn't have thought that a stone building would be able to catch fire. In any case, the shed was never repaired after the fire. Insert a clip of their cover of Falco's De Commissar here. As for why I've placed a galloping goose from the Rio Grande Southern on the Alpine Tunnel line, I have no idea. Since it focuses on one of the more obscure Colorado narrow gauge lines, and a journey on this section is a pretty slow one, not to mention a difficult experience, I wonder how much appeal the Alpine Tunnel add-on will have in the TS community. Personally, I still like this route, even if mainly for the reasonably well-made scenery that could give Milepost's own Rio Grande Southern route a run for its money. Your mileage may vary, but in my opinion, the new route is let down by the mostly recycled rolling stock and lack of any steam locomotives that are new to the game, not to mention few updates to the B4D's audio. I could still recommend this route if you're particularly interested in the Colorado narrow gauge, but I would also recommend waiting for a sale and buying the route then. I am of the opinion that the Colorado and Southern Alpine Tunnel add-on is not worth the full asking price of $46.49 NZD, or whatever the equivalent is in your local currency. Anyway, if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win long, pointed spikes of ice endorsed by a YouTuber who drives 20 and 491 at the museum. It's the Hicycles.